Greetings, traveler. You've found your way back to the Silver Quill Corner. I am Grayfin, the Story Keeper. Long ago, when I was but a house elf bound to an ancient wizarding family, I learned that stories carry more magic than even the strongest spells. When I was freed, I gathered those tales, whispers of Hogwarts, legends of witches and wizards, and dreams woven through the ages. Tonight, as the wind curls against the windows and the candles burn low, let us journey together into this tale. Tonight, we begin with the early life of Minerva McGonagall, a witch of unmatched wisdom, courage, and quiet compassion. Her story is not only one of magic, but also of love, secrecy, and strength. Minerva was born to a most unusual pairing. Her father, Robert McGonagall, was a respected Muggle minister, stern, upright, and deeply devoted to honesty. Her mother, Isabel Ross, was a gifted witch who had once walked the halls of Hogwarts herself. When Robert and Isabel married, it was out of true love, but also quiet rebellion. For Isabel kept her magical heritage secret from both Robert and her wizarding family. She gave up the world she had known to live as a Muggle wife, a decision that brought her both joy and aching sorrow. Their first home was a modest stone house in the Highlands. The winters were cold and biting, yet inside, Isabel worked tirelessly to make it warm and welcoming, stretching Robert's small salary into something homely and good. It was here that Minerva was born. Her name, chosen by her mother, raised eyebrows among neighbors, for it was ancient and unusual, taken from her grandmother and echoing the Roman goddess of wisdom. From the very beginning, Minerva was destined to stand apart. As a child, her magic revealed itself early. Before she could speak, her toys would leap from the shelf into her crib, tumbling playfully into her tiny hands. The family's tabby cat seemed oddly obedient, padding to her side whenever she wished it near. Sometimes Robert's treasured bagpipes would begin to play by themselves in the next room, soft, haunting tunes that made baby Minerva giggle. Isabel knew the signs well. She watched her daughter with both pride and a quiet, gnawing fear. She remembered her own childhood of open magic, of lessons at Hogwarts, of feasts in the candlelit Great Hall, and now, raising Minerva in a home where every spell had to remain hidden, she longed for the world she had given up. There came a day when Isabel could no longer keep her secret from Robert. With trembling hands, she drew her wand before him, confessing the truth at last. She expected anger or even fear. Robert, to his credit, did not turn away. He still loved her deeply, yet the weight of secrecy pressed heavily on him. A man who had built his life on honesty was now forced to conceal the greatest truth of all. That magic was real and lived within his very own home. Their marriage endured, but it carried strains that Minerva, even as a child, could sense. She would see her mother withdraw for days, isolating herself, clinging to her daughter in silence. She would watch her father wrestle with a life he could not fully understand. The unspoken tension of two worlds colliding filled the air of their household. And though Minerva was too young to name it, she carried that weight in her heart. In time, two younger brothers joined the family, Malcolm and then Robert Jr. Both displayed magic as well, their accidental outbursts harder to hide. Minerva, wise beyond her years, helped her mother soothe their confusion and shield their father from the chaos. She became, even in childhood, a quiet protector, learning how to balance truth and silence, affection and restraint. She loved her father dearly. In him she saw her own sense of duty, her own sharp mind. And though she shared her mother's gifts, she inherited her father's upright spirit, his steady resolve. Minerva was, from the very beginning, a bridge between two worlds. Then, at the age of 11, her letter arrived. An owl swept through the Highland mist, bearing parchment sealed with a crimson crest, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Isabel wept when she saw it. Her pride overflowed, but so too did her envy, for her daughter would now return to the magical world Isabel herself had abandoned, free to learn, free to belong. For Minerva, the letter was more than an invitation. It was a promise, a chance to step into the life she had glimpsed only in her mother's quiet stories, a chance to leave behind secrecy and walk boldly into magic. And so, with trunk packed, wand soon to be chosen, and heart alight with wonder, Minerva McGonagall set out for Hogwarts. The first chapter of her extraordinary journey was about to begin. And as we close this first chapter of Minerva's story, imagine the highlands fading into dusk, the little girl with bright eyes boarding the train, unaware of the destiny that awaited her. The steam of the Hogwarts Express curled into the grey September sky. Inside the train, 11-year-old Minerva McGonagall sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, her sharp green eyes watching the highlands pass by. She was not one for chatter, not even then. Her thoughts drifted to her mother's stories of moving staircases, enchanted ceilings, and feasts where candles floated mid-air. Soon, those stories would become her reality. At last, the train slowed, brakes screeching against the track. First years gathered nervously, their trunks and owls clattering behind them. And there, lantern held high, was Rubeus Hagrid, calling them across the Black Lake. Minerva's breath caught. The sight of Hogwarts rising in the distance, towers glowing against the night sky, would stay with her for life. Inside the castle, Minerva was guided into the great hall, where thousands of candles floated high above, their light glimmering across 4 long tables filled with eager faces. At the front of the chamber waited the ancient sorting hat, patched and frayed from centuries of service, perched upon its humble stool. When her name was called, Minerva's heart pounded in her chest. She stepped forward, every eye upon her, and lowered herself onto the stool. The hat slipped down over her brow, and in the stillness that followed, her fate began to unfold. It was not an easy choice. Her sharp mind and love of learning pulled strongly toward Ravenclaw. Yet deep within her, there was a different fire. Bravery, conviction, and an unshakable loyalty that demanded to be seen. The sorting hat wrestled with her for longer than most ever experience, minutes passing in silence, a rare hat stall. Finally, the decision was made. Gryffindor. The table draped in red and gold erupted in cheers. Minerva slipped down from the stool, her cheeks flushed from the trial, and crossed the hall to her new house. She could not have known it then, but that choice would shape far more than her school years. It would carve the path of her entire life. At Hogwarts, Minerva thrived. She was a brilliant student, excelling most in Transfiguration under the guidance of Professor Albus Dumbledore. He recognized her talent quickly, praising her precision, her discipline, her creativity. Though stern even as a girl, Minerva glowed under his mentorship. Their bond, forged then, would shape the rest of her life. She made friends too, most notably with a spirited Hufflepuff girl named Pomona Sprout. The two balanced each other well, Minerva, serious and diligent, Pomona, warm and earthy. Their friendship would last decades, rooted in laughter shared among the greenhouses and library shelves. Quidditch became another passion. Minerva proved a natural flyer, fierce and agile, her competitive streak emerging each time she took to the air. By her final year, she was captain of the Gryffindor team. She led with both fire and fairness, a quality that would one day define her as head of house. Yet, in her last match, fate dealt her a blow. A Slytherin player fouled her brutally, sending her crashing to the ground. She suffered a concussion, broken ribs, and a bitter memory that never fully left her. Though she recovered, her desire to see Gryffindor defeat Slytherin burned hotter than ever. Perhaps her greatest achievement as a student came under Professor Dumbledore's careful supervision. With tireless study, Minerva mastered one of the most difficult feats in magical practice, becoming an animagus. She learned to transform at will into a sleek tabby cat, marked by distinctive spectacle-like patterns around her eyes. It was a secret skill then, but one that later made her both formidable and beloved. Imagine her, a young girl, pacing her dormitory, determination etched across her face. And then, with a shimmer of magic, shrinking into feline form, whiskers twitching, paws soft against the stone floor, a quiet purr rising in her chest. It was proof, even then, of her extraordinary discipline and her deep bond with transfiguration. Years passed. She rose from prefect to head girl, her academic record flawless. Professors admired her, students respected her, yet she was never arrogant, never careless. Minerva carried herself with dignity, with a seriousness that seemed older than her years. And so, as she prepared to graduate, the castle itself seemed to acknowledge her. The candles flickered more warmly. The portraits nodded in approval. Even the sorting hat perched silently on its shelf might have thought, yes, Gryffindor was the right choice. After 7 years at Hogwarts, Minerva McGonagall graduated at the top of her class. She had become head girl, a prize-winning scholar, and one of the most gifted students of her generation. With her wand and her wits, she could have pursued almost any path in the wizarding world. Her first step was to London, where she accepted a post in the Ministry of Magic, in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. On parchment, it was the perfect career, prestigious, important, promising advancement. But in truth, the ministry never felt like home. Minerva's colleagues muttered disdain for muggles, sneering at their ignorance. Each remark cut at her heart. She adored her muggle father. She cherished her childhood village. She could not bear the prejudice that flowed so casually through the corridors of power. And so, though she excelled, her joy dimmed. London was grey, crowded, lonely. She longed for the stone halls of Hogwarts, the safety of the Highlands, the warmth of true belonging. That summer, she returned to her parents' home for a visit. The air was fresh, the hills rolled endlessly, and her heart, for the first time in years, felt light. It was then she met Dougal McGregor, a young Muggle farmer's son, strong, kind, and unpretentious. His laughter was easy, his smile disarming. For the first time in her life, Minerva, disciplined, reserved Minerva, found herself tumbling headlong into love. They spent the summer together, walking the fields, talking late into the night beneath starlit skies. Dougal knew nothing of magic, and Minerva could not tell him. Yet the connection was so real, so immediate, that secrecy seemed to melt away in his presence. By the end of the season, Dougal proposed. Minerva, caught between joy and disbelief, accepted. It was the only time in her long life she truly lost her head to romance. But in the quiet hours after, doubts crept in. She thought of her mother, Isabel, who had given up her magical world to marry Robert. She remembered the silences in their home, the hidden wand, the loneliness that never left her mother's eyes. Minerva saw her future with painful clarity. To marry Dougal would mean sacrifice. It would mean hiding her gifts, bending her truth, raising children who must conceal their very nature. It would mean giving up her career, her ambitions, the world she loved most. And so, with a heavy heart, she made the hardest choice. The next morning, she sought him out. Her words were steady, but her soul trembled. She told Dougal she could not marry him, that she loved him, yes, but that love could not bridge the divide between their worlds. He was devastated. She was too. Yet Minerva did not allow herself to show it. She buried her heartbreak deep, where few would ever see. She returned to London a changed woman. The ministry halls seemed colder than ever. She worked with discipline but without joy. She missed Dougal fiercely and in secret kept a photograph of him locked away. Long after, she would glance at it in moments of solitude, her expression unreadable, her heart unspoken. It was a pattern that would follow her through life. Duty before desire, principle before passion. She would give everything to her students, to her colleagues, to the cause of good, but her own happiness would always come second. Years later, when Dougal married another woman, Minerva received word through her mother. And though she had known it would happen, the news broke something quiet inside her. He would die tragically in a wizarding war, leaving behind children. Minerva never forgot him, nor forgave fate for taking what little chance they had. And yet, in the ashes of heartbreak, strength took root. For if her path was not to be one of family and marriage, then it would be one of knowledge, teaching, and service. Her discipline sharpened. Her heart grew firm. Her love, once poured into a single man, became a fierce devotion to Hogwarts itself, and to the generations of students who would pass under its enchanted roof. And so Minerva's first love ended not with anger, but with quiet sorrow. She carried it with her always, but it shaped her into the teacher, the leader, the legend she would one day become. After Hogwarts, Minerva's life seemed full of promise. She had graduated with top honors, her reputation as one of the finest students of her year already sealed. When she was offered a dazzling promotion after only 2 years, Minerva surprised everyone by declining. Instead, she wrote to Hogwarts. Within hours, an owl returned, Albus Dumbledore himself offering her a post in the Transfiguration Department. Coming home to the castle was like stepping back into her skin. She quickly established herself as a strict but inspiring teacher. Students whispered about her sharp tongue and piercing gaze, yet beneath it lay a loyalty fiercer than any spell. Soon she was named head of Gryffindor House, her courage and fairness a match for the lion she represented. And still, love found her again. Her former ministry superior, Elphinstone Urquhart, never stopped caring for her. For years he proposed, and for years she refused, still bound by the ghost of Dougal. Eventually, though, she said yes. Their marriage was happy, if tragically short. Elphinstone died suddenly from a venomous tentacular bite, leaving Minerva a widow. Heartbroken, she packed away their shared life and returned to her small chamber at Hogwarts. Beneath her bed, she kept a locked box. Inside were photographs of Dougal, of Elphinstone, and of her family. She rarely opened it. Her private griefs were hers alone. But if sorrow marked her personal life, courage defined her public one. During Voldemort's first rise, Minerva quietly risked her life as a spy, using her animagus form to slip unnoticed and deliver intelligence. Few ever knew the extent of her bravery, because she never boasted of it. And yet, glimpses of her true self shone through. She was fiercely protective of her students, a quality that would later see her stand up for Neville Longbottom when his own grandmother belittled him, and even throw herself in front of Ministry Aura's spells to defend Hagrid. By the time Minerva McGonagall settled into her role as Hogwarts professor, she was no longer just a brilliant witch. She was a woman shaped by love, loss, and unshakable principle. A stern face, yes, but one that hid a heart loyal to her students, her colleagues, and to the school she would defend to her very last breath. Back at Hogwarts, Minerva McGonagall stepped once more into the familiar stone corridors that had shaped her youth. Gone were the grey London streets and the lonely flat with its rain-streaked windows. Here, the candles floated in mid-air. Here, the fireplaces whispered with emerald flames. Here, she belonged. She threw herself into her work with quiet determination. Transfiguration, that most intricate branch of magic, became not only her craft, but her gift to others. Students quickly learned that Professor McGonagall was strict, yet utterly fair. She expected excellence, but her eyes always softened when a child's talent began to bloom. Albus Dumbledore, now climbing to new responsibilities at the school, welcomed her warmly back into the fold. Between the two of them, a bond grew that would last decades. Dumbledore, with his twinkling humor and hidden burdens, found in Minerva a steady counterpart. And Minerva, though private and reserved, knew she could trust Albus with her quiet griefs. There were whispered evenings when, by the fire in his office, they shared stories not as headmaster and professor, but as friends who had each carried losses too heavy for most hearts. Her teaching style was famous, sharp, concise, laced with dry wit. Yet beneath the stern exterior lay a tenderness that students came to recognize in flashes. It was she who saw promise where others might not. When Neville Longbottom fumbled with spells and stumbled through lessons, she was hard on him, but protective. Years later, when his grandmother scoffed at his love for herbology, it was McGonagall who reminded her that Neville was already more than enough, just as he was. And in the darker years, when the Ministry tried to meddle at Hogwarts, Minerva's steel shone through. When Dolores Umbridge, with her syrupy smile and poisoned words, sneered that Harry could never hope to become an Auror, McGonagall did not hesitate. She leaned forward, spectacles flashing, her voice cold as steel. Calmly, she reminded Umbridge that Harry had achieved high marks in every defense test set by a competent teacher. It was more than defiance. It was a shield raised for her student. In that moment, she wasn't simply a professor. She was fierce, protective, almost motherly. That same sharpness, however, could turn in an instant to something unexpectedly warm. Later, when Harry stormed into her office after yet another clash with Umbridge, she regarded him coolly for a moment. Then, with an almost imperceptible softening, she reached for a tin on her desk and nudged it toward him, offering a simple biscuit. It was such a small act, delivered with her usual dry humor, but it carried weight. In that moment, Harry felt understood, not as the chosen one, but as a boy who needed comfort. And just when the world thought they had her figured out, McGonagall could still surprise. When Peeves the poltergeist tried to unscrew a chandelier, she merely walked past and, with the faintest twitch of amusement, told him he was turning it the wrong way. Even mischief in her hands was sharpened into a lesson. Order through wit, rebellion with purpose. Her Gryffindor students revered her, though they would seldom confess it. She pushed them harder than any professor, but when victory came and the common room fire roared with pride, it was Minerva who cheered loudest. Her own Quidditch career had been cut short by a foul from Slytherin, and she never quite forgave them. Instead, she lived vicariously through her lions, urging them to fly higher, faster, to bring Slytherin down on the pitch. When young Harry Potter took to the skies, she quietly bent the rules to place the fastest broom in his hands. Strict, yes, but her loyalty to her house glowed brighter than gold. Her devotion stretched far beyond her lions. McGonagall was loyal to Hogwarts itself, the ancient stone walls as much her charge as the students within. It was she who enchanted the colossal chessboard that once tested Harry, Ron, and Hermione, stone warriors crashing into place under her spell. And years later, when the school itself stood under siege, she summoned the castle's statues to defend their home. The fire in her eyes revealed what few had ever glimpsed. Even she took joy in the sheer power of her craft. To students, she was stern but secretly soft. To colleagues, she was sharp-tongued yet unwaveringly loyal. To Dumbledore, she was perhaps the truest ally, a woman whose discipline masked a heart scarred by loss but never broken. Alone in her chamber, she would sometimes rest her gaze on the locked box beneath her bed, where photographs of her parents, her lost Dougal, and her late husband Elphinstone lay hidden. Few ever guessed how deep her grief ran, for by day she gave everything to her work, her students, and the school that had become her refuge. When Harry returned in his final year, hunted and desperate, McGonagall placed her full faith in him. She rallied the teachers, fortified the halls, and stood as the shield of Hogwarts. Her belief in him was quiet, unshakable, and exactly what he needed. Later, when she saw his body carried into the courtyard, her anguished cry split the night, and when he rose again, alive, her relief burned brighter than any spell. In the end, Minerva McGonagall was remembered not just as a stern professor or a formidable witch, but as the very heart of Hogwarts, the one who stood when others faltered, the one who believed in her students long before they believed in themselves. And so, in the hush of the castle's corridors, as candles flicker and portraits whisper, her legacy endures. Strict but fair, sharp as steel, yet soft as wool. A warrior, a teacher, a guardian, always. And so, dear listener, may the life of Minerva McGonagall remind you that courage is quiet, loyalty is steadfast, and love often hides beneath the sternest of faces. Within the stone walls of Hogwarts, her spirit lingers still, watchful, wise, and unyielding. As you close your eyes, carry her strength with you into dreams. Rest well, for even in the darkest night, guardians like McGonagall remain eternal.